are here for the workshop with PEC. I am.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Teresa. You're welcome.
Mayor and Council, Erin from PEC is here to finish our conversation and follow up from the work she's done on the comp plan updates.
Hello, thank you all for having me again. As Matt said, so I have taken the feedback from the public that we gathered from the workshop, the listening sessions, as well as the community survey from 2020, and then compiled that and kind of tailored that down based on what I heard from you all at our last workshop, and then put together a list of 4 top priorities. These are kind of broad, and I'll go through each of them, but for tonight, our exercise is just really getting your guys' feedback. Did I encapsulate what you guys were feeling and thinking when we talked to these priorities? Is there anything missing? And is there anything that needs to be further refined? So as I go through, feel free to kind of stop and ask questions as they arise. I'll pause kind of in between each one of these priorities, but if something pops up as I'm going through things, please don't hesitate to stop me.
Erin, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
So, Council, just as a housekeeping item, I just remember this, we changed your microphones, so you do not have to hold down the button anymore. You just push it, turns it on, push it, turns it off.
You have no idea how excited I am about this change.
So, they should all be working.
You
We
all
tested
know
it.
that I
That
sit
is-
here and hold it, and I hate that, so thank goodness I shouldn't hopefully stutter as much. Yay.
Okay, so remind me, you guys can see on your screen. Okay, perfect. I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure. All right, so starting off first, and I don't have these numbered, but I do kind of have them in order of priority. So what we heard was the top priority is managing growth for the community. You all are in a really unique position due to your geographic location, proximity to other cities in the area, transportation networks. It's really likely that growth is going to happen. You're already seeing it, and that will only continue based on some of the economic projections and things that we're seeing in the area. And what continuously came up was really a strong desire to manage that growth. So to make sure you're ready for it, to make sure that you're in control, and it really things develop the way that you would like and you would like to see them going forward. So with that being said, a top priority of that growth management is maintaining the current character of Kechi, and the sense of place that you feel when you are here right now. How do you both grow and keep that that character that's really true to the spirit of Kechi? And one of the key ways that communities can do that is to really make sure that they are adopting a balanced approach to growth. So growth where it makes sense, growth where it is strategic, and not just growth for the sake of growth. Not saying all development is good and it can happen anywhere, but really looking at do these different land uses and developments that want to come in make sense in the areas where they're being proposed, and make sense in a variety of ways. That can be land use compatibility, it can be infrastructure pieces, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but really looking at holistically, does this growth make sense? Does it fit with what's around that area, and does it match with what the community is looking for? So a critical consideration of this is going to be capacity to serve. So community character is one big piece, and it's very, very important. But another piece is the very real factor of utility capacity and infrastructure in general. So wanting to make sure that when new opportunities for growth come in, they're being evaluated, both looking at the benefits to the community and having a potential increase in revenue with new development, but then also the costs and looking at what potential service costs will look like. If you are going to need additional water and sewer capacity, if there's going to be additional traffic on a road, that all has a cost. And a key to managing growth is really making sure that it happens in a way that is beneficial to the community. And then lastly, to that end, some kind of, it's always really important with utility and infrastructure investments that they are strategic and planned. I know you guys have already gone through a lot of those processes. So you have the water master plan, you have the sanitary sewer master plan, and that's great. And really continuing looking at capacity to serve, but then also thinking forward, are there opportunities? Is there private funding? Is there grant funding? What can we do to ensure that we can fund these projects in the future? So we want to plan them. We also want to make sure that we have resources to put them in place, either, when, concurrently with development, or ideally before development occurs, so that you're ready for that and you're not having to scramble to put those pieces into place. So on that first piece there, I'll scroll back up so you can see better. Any questions, comments, thoughts on that section?
So far it's pretty good.
Is there anything that you have heard from the community or that we mentioned coming out of that workshop that you feel like is not represented here? Okay, great. All right, and then piggybacking off of making sure that development is consistent with the character and the community, efforts to preserve, promote, and encourage the existing character of Kechi are very, very supported among the community. Your guys' residents love it here. That's great. And they really want to continue to invest in this place that they call home. And they want to continue to recognize the place they call home in 20 years. So what that looks like in promoting some of these assets you guys have, first would be, you have already done great efforts in planning for the Arts and Business District. So that is clearly the cultural and community center of Kechi. I feel like the overarching majority of the comments we receive in all of our engagement center on things related to the Arts and Business District. Whether that was comments on different types of businesses they want to see, transportation, infrastructure, housing, all of those different elements had a piece that was related to this district. It's clearly very important. And so implementing some of those strategic placemaking efforts, like the streetscaping, some of those kind of wayfinding, like signage or ways to identify the district and really promote it to both residents and visitors, are very well supported by the community. Doing this will, we know, will improve feelings of community identification and will only go further to promote the existing pride of place that you all have cultivated here. And really, investments in these areas will build on the momentum and the resources that you have already put into developing this great plan. So I don't by any means think you guys need a new arts and business plan. The one you have is great. And really focusing on implementing those things, I think, will go very far. And then the second piece there is planning for strategic investments in your guys' public spaces. So whether that's parks, recreational facilities, locations to gather, just green open space that is public, all of those pieces. And again, making those investments strategically will ensure that those spaces are activated, people want to go to them, they're spending time there, as well as maintaining them for future generations. So planning for some of those investments before you get to a piece where you're like, oh my gosh, we have to replace a whole playground or the whole pool. In a lot of communities, that's a big thing right now is pool replacement. So thinking about those things before you get to a, oh my gosh, we have to get this done stage. So thoughts and feelings on that section there?
Still think you're good.
Okay. very easy. Honestly. I feel like I should be peppered with questions a little more.
Give us at the end. Well,
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have more.
Yeah. All right. So then moving along here, the third big thing that we heard from the community and you all is addressing existing gaps in the transportation network as it exists now. And we heard a lot about walkability and sidewalks. That's a big desire of the community. But what I think is always really important when you're thinking about sidewalk infrastructure is not just, there's a prioritization level that's really, really important there. So focusing on investments that are going to provide routes to key destinations are going to make a really big difference in how walkability feels in the community and how the community feels that you all are responding to their concerns in regard to walkability. So if there is a job location or job center or a school or a park that does not have walking access, making those improvements there go a lot farther than making them in a residential neighborhood where it's great to be able to walk in your neighborhood, but really allowing families to be able to walk to those key destinations will go very far. That goes for streets as well, so I don't want to leave that piece out. When you're thinking about improvements to your street network, which I know that you have street projects going on right now, but when you're looking to other ones in the future, very important that you're thinking about the high traffic areas, where folks are coming in, and what is their perception as they're entering the community or exiting the community, and centering your investments along those key corridors. The next thing you heard a lot about was parking, and there were numerous concerns about the ability to park downtown, and you wouldn't think that parking and walkability were highly interrelated, but they actually are. So there's a planning concept called Park Once areas, and those are the types of kind of downtown communities where you might drive from your neighborhood, but you park at the end of the street, and you're going to mosey around, you're going to go to the different shops, maybe you're going to eat lunch, stop at a few more shops, and then eventually circle back and walk to your vehicle. You're not moving your vehicle to each of these different locations, and that does a wonder in reducing congestion in the downtown area. So if someone is parking in an area that they can easily walk to everything, don't have as big of a parking issue because you're taking the strain off of parking in those core areas. And it also just really improves the look and feel of a district when you have folks that are parking and they're not and walking, and you're not having this congestion, all you're seeing are vehicles and it's hard to cross the street. And so focusing on investments that potentially could provide more parking for that downtown or for the arts and culture downtown area will be very important. And then the last piece that we talked about, which is last on the list but still very, very important, is attracting new businesses and encouraging economic growth in the community. So we put a lot of effort into talking to your business community. Matt and I did 8 individual listening interview sessions with businesses and got a lot of really good feedback. And one of the things that was very encouraging is this city is known as being a good place to do business. People want to start and develop businesses here, so that's not a hurdle that you're having to overcome. People want to come to Kechi. And while you guys have had a number of new commercial developments, as I understand, the city is still lacking in those neighborhood serving amenities. And what I mean by neighborhood serving are those things that you're not going to, you don't generally want to drive a long distance to get to. Things like a coffee shop, a small restaurant or cafe, a barber shop or hair salon, maybe a very small scale grocery store, market, ice cream shops, things that when you think about their service radius, they're not drawing in a large group. People aren't maybe driving to town to go to this one barber shop, but they really benefit the neighborhood. So we heard time and time again that efforts to promote development of specifically a coffee shop is a really big one, or we did hear ice cream shop a lot too for people that want to be able to walk with their kiddos, or maybe they have a ball game or something, or an activity at a park and they want to stop by there afterwards. Though attracting those kinds of businesses will do a lot to really develop that neighborhood feel and also to enhance that kind of feeling of place in the downtown area. And with that being said, when we talked about some of these things, we asked questions about what works well, maybe what doesn't work well as a business owner, and then talked a little bit about like incentives and what would make people want to develop here as opposed to other places. And one of the things that we did hear is that folks love working and starting businesses in this community, but you don't currently have a mechanism to incentivize development. I know you guys have had some conversations about that, but there is really strong community support for some investments and some incentives like an NRP program or other tax abatement programs that allow you to pick a spot on a map and say, you know, this is really where we want to see growth happen, and so we are going to incentivize development in this area. It gives you a lot of it gives you a kind of a seat at the table in these discussions that are otherwise very market driven, and allows you to be competitive with some other areas. So developing those kinds of incentives will be really important to citing some of those businesses. And then to that end, just also thinking about ways to market sites. So outside of incentives, but there are other programs, things like the Kansas Department of Commerce has some programs where they have a list of shovel-ready sites. There are different ways that you can market and work with landowners to kind of encourage them to put their property, if they're looking to sell it, on a website or kind of get it out there to the development community so that they know this is shovel-ready. You know, they're very thorough with a lot of these things, so they'll even document like what it's zoned as, where utilities are located, any incentives you all have, and they can pop on these websites and see like, oh, I'm looking for this exact thing to build XYZ, and Kechi looks like a great place to do it because I have all this information here that I pulled from this easy website. So marketing those sites can really make a big difference for communities. And that is all I've got. So I'm excited to hear what you all think and open to any feedback you all have or questions.
Council?
One question I had with the Kechi and Oliver intersection project, we have some parking going back to the park once. Do you feel that's enough? Do we need to probably have a plan to develop more?
I think that would be a really good start. I would have to professionally recommend like to see a parking study to tell you that that's 100% going to meet your needs. But I would say, based on what we heard from the community, maybe a lot that's off street would be helpful as well. And I'm not necessarily recommending that that's something that's directly in your arts and culture district. I'm not saying to take a parcel or an area where you could have a business and put a parking lot there, but if you could put it in a strategic location where it's still walkable, but maybe screened from the street or set back a little bit, so that it's not the first thing people see when they pull in, but it's still close. So that would be my recommendation, would be to look at what you've got, but also think about potential for adding more. And with parking and with traffic, there's this thing called induced demand, which means that as your city grows and the more that you provide, so you're going to provide these on-street parking spots, and they will fulfill a need, but now more folks are going to say, oh, I remember that there's parking on Kechi at the intersection on the street, so I'm going to drive over there. More and more folks are going to know that parking is there, so there may be more cars that are looking to park in that spot. So my recommendation would be to think about that, but maybe adding in other areas as well.
When you talk to other folks other than us and in the one listening session,
Was there any other transportation things that they brought up, I know we don't have buses that come through here, so, and I know in Wichita, that's a hindrance for them, is buses don't go everywhere, so was that indicated at all here?
You know, there was not a strong desire for transit style transportation investments, and typically in larger cities, you know, transit's always a great idea for reducing, you know, parking and congestion. In a small community, I don't know that that is the best direction, because you do have to make that financially feasible, financially solvent to run. You have to have a certain level of ridership that I don't know that a community of your size right now would necessarily have, but definitely something to look at in the future and as you continue to grow.
And the reason I bring that up is because in REAP and in some of the other conversations and other meetings I've had, it's been talked about branching out the Wichita Public Transit to smaller communities if we get bigger businesses who are around to bus people
Yeah.
to those jobs. So I figured I'd
Yeah,
just throw it out.
and definitely like if growth occurs and you do see a very large, like an employment type use come in, that could be something really good to look at, or like a school type use, anything where you have commuters, some type of intra-local agreement or kind of a regional partnership could definitely be beneficial at that point.
Was there anything specific about the sidewalks that were mentioned, like directionally where might be best or that kind of thing?
Not specific in regard to routes outside of very much a desire to have access to the Arts and Business District as well as parks, and making those areas walkable. But we didn't get any specific feedback on, and I do try to stay away from that sometimes because a lot of times it's like, oh, I would love a new sidewalk right in front of my house. So we try to keep the conversations a little bit more focused on the system as a whole, but definitely prioritizing investments to create routes to those key locations. We're very supportive, but not specific right of way or anything like that.
Anything else? Feel like you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Matt, did I leave anything else? Is there
No,
anything else
I don't think
okay.
so. I think you were very thorough in covering everything, and that's probably why there weren't many questions. is
Yeah.
because you just covered it.
I feel like it was everything we talked about in the workshop and in the listening session. I think you encompassed it well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, great. That's what I love to hear. I'll touch really quickly on next steps, and then I know you guys will hopefully have a little bit of a break before you have a meeting later on today, so it's great. So what I will do is, first thing is take the draft watermark off this, and then you'll have this list of priorities that you can point to. We have also completed a demographic assessment for the community and a kind of summary of factors that will affect growth. So those will be provided to Matt for his review, and then once we get the gold star on those, all of this will be formatted to be pretty and in a kind of a plan format, as opposed to the Word format here. So I want to make sure we get the words right, and then we can add in all of the maps and the fun graphics. But anyways, just know that we're working on putting those things together, and those are to come.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much. Council, I would entertain a motion. Unless you want to sit here for another 35 minutes.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, you would motion to adjourn until 7 o'clock for the regular scheduled meeting.
I move that we adjourn until 7 o'clock.
Second.
I have a motion by Karen, second by Todd. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. We are adjourned. See you in 35 minutes.